It's Chris. We're counting down the top games of 2024 for me. And I thought I'd throw in a few extra here because I thought 2024 was a relatively outstanding game year. So, you know what? Let's go, right? 25 through 11. Short, several sentences, several lines about why it is where it is and how I feel about it. You ready? 25 through 11. It's a lot of games. We got a lot of ground to cover. Let's go. Number 25, Foundations of Metropolis. The cardboard version, finally, of Foundations of Rome. I can see why people like it with the spatial arrangement of building your buildings from your individual tableau onto the shared grid. I think that it's really a clever little game. I would not put it at the top of my tile layings, though, comparatively. And so, not that it's a bad game, but when I'm thinking tile laying, I'm going, okay, I would potentially rather play other ones in place of it. Now, supposedly, the expansions for Rome add a little bit extra, and with any game like this, if it really can add a little bit more and get more appeal to the table, I'm all for it. And I love the fact that they actually did this. You know, truth be told, it was practically printing money because people loved Foundations of Rome but didn't want to spend that much money on their own copy. So now everybody can have a copy no matter what your budget. So give kudos where kudos is due. Number 25. Then number 24, the remake of the 2008 game from Roxley, Skyrise. One of the few things I have ever late pledged for after not getting in on the campaign. The tight snake draft auctioning of building your properties, gathering them, area control, secret objectives, one-time wonder ability in the middle of the game to slowly build your towers better than everyone else. Not sure how I really feel about it with limited number of plays at this point because it's chaotic. It's not as restricted as some of the other auctioning games, more classically speaking, like Raw, but it's still fun in the core game loop of placing your buildings and outbidding your opponents. Claiming your different territories, gathering the neighborhood and patron discs of various colors to give you endgame scoring. It's bordering, it's teetering on the just enough and just enough too much to make me wonder with this controlled chaos if it's going to have repeated play. And I have the collector's edition, so I have a little bit of too much money tied up in this one. But again, this is one I could see on the list really going up and building upon it. Or I could easily see myself selling it a year from now as well. But we'll see. It had to make the list for those reasons. 23 is Nawalli, the Aztec-based lane battling head-to-head, can draft, can just pre-construct deck battle, if you will. And the Aztec symbology is strong. That's the only reason that this isn't much higher up on the list, because the cleverness of the merging of your creatures together and adding items occasionally and paying their cost until somebody is ultimately declared the victor over these 4 lanes as you just bash them up and take that. It's absolutely fantastically amazing. In the lines of something like, if you like the Sky Tier Horde, this is up there with that. I would highly recommend this. The problem is the symbology is just so much that the learning curve is incredibly difficult. And the unintuitiveness of merging your monsters together is a little bit, well, just difficult to wrap your mind around the first couple times you play. But the outstanding mechanistic combos that this allows you, just the craziness with the pre-constructed or just draft along the way style, depending on your flavor, in this small size of a box, we had to talk about it, and that's why it's number 23. Sticking with the small box theme, Portland Gaming Collective brought us the import Tricktakers. Think a trick-taking game meets Root. And that's essentially what you've got going on with about a half a dozen different character archetypes that are going to be available to you to change how you're scoring those tricks on a round-by-round basis. Want to be totally convoluted? Want to be totally straightforward? Want to get 0 tricks? Want to get them all and shoot the moon? You can do it, and you can play it repeatedly in order to do so. Again, trick taking maximized at really a 4-player count, just like a Root situation, only with just cards, leaves it for a very select few, but the few that, you know, enjoy this is an absolutely outstanding game from that aspect. Small boxes are all the rage, with number 21 continuing the trend. And this one, again, I got at the beginning of the year, and I went into it with absolutely zero expectations with Courtisans. And it is a simple 3 cards in your hand every round, and I play 1 to my tableau, 1 to the center tableau, and I get to force one of my cards onto somebody else's tableau. And the center tableau determines what value of each of these different colored cards are actually worth, positive or negative. You're going to be utilizing some small asymmetric abilities to take that at people. And it really shines at a 3, maybe 4 player count, but it's easily one of my kids in the best family games of the year. And so just again, why didn't I think of this sort of dynamic is straightforward and overachieves. It's just very, very pleasant and fun to get to the table. And again, usually playing it a couple times in a row. So 21, Courtisans. Breaking in at number 20, Star Wars of the Unlimiteds, right? We have now seen 3 iterations of this, and the 4th is literally on the heels of me filming this. Although I repeatedly and consistently am not a fan of the TCG model, and I do not endorse it as a whole, I still couldn't help myself from getting sucked in. I am a fan of the artwork. I am a huge Star Wars fan. At the same time, the mechanics that they have taken here and the balance and care that has gone into this, not only just in the first set, but the overarching of all of them is, frankly speaking, outstandingly amazing. I don't think many people went into this looking at it as more than a money system. I don't think that many people went into this thinking that it was going to be more than a way to separate you and your dollars with nostalgia for Star Wars. And it has exceeded expectations. The selling out of the first run of this exceeded anything that we have seen almost regardless of game, except for maybe like a Slay the Spire, Harmonies, and Heat in the last couple years. And that's saying something. When you make the comparisons of the big 3, right? Like you got your Yu-Gi-Ohs, your Pokemons, and your Magic the Gatherings. This one is making a lot more waves than I think people thought. And if FFG continues on this trend, it may not be for you, but outstanding design. Number 19 here. My favorite worker placement, my favorite pure worker placement from 2024 in the form of Wondrous Creatures from Bad Comet. Previously, the outstanding game of Life of Amazonia in 2023, 2024 went a slightly different direction, but all nonetheless absolutely fantastic in a spin-off of things that you'll recognize, how they're doing it mechanically as you put your workers down, covering several hexes, gathering several resources, also having several resources be adaptable to those terrains in the first place, and terraforming it, if you will, while then utilizing a set collection combo that's just kind of fun as you gather your creatures and make your tableau with arrangement, a variety of powers that affect all different phases of the game. Just like Life of Amazonia, I felt like it was probably a little bit overstaying its welcome, a little bit longer than I would have ideally liked, but at the same time, just a lot of fun. And I say that as a non-worker placement person, typically in these situations. So one of those that, you know what? Yeah, I'm all for it. Fun game. Let's play. 18, talked about it when it ran its campaign, and this is Kelp, otherwise known as Shark versus Octopus. Yeah, it's light. It's not meant to be the most deterministic, most strategic, most depth of layers, chess-like strategy that you're doing, right? It's pretty straightforward. But pretty straightforward can still be pretty fun. Does it need a little bit of something spiced up? Yeah, you got the little expansion to go along with it. Is it as heavy or quite up my, sort of 2-player head-to-head duelers that I really, really enjoy? No. But it's a fresh, flavorful twist on, a theme and a slight twist of the mechanics that you're manipulating on the board. Again, I don't really have anything bad to say about it. It's just, not higher in this list because if you give me other 2-player asymmetric dueling, warring, battling type faction games, I usually prefer those. But still outstanding for what it is, and that's why it's where it is. Going back to the small boxes, we have the Gang, the Mind, the Game. Horrible names for clever games. And this falls in the same line of things, where if you kind of like this style of things, and if you ever thought you'd find yourself playing competitive poker, and if you ever thought you'd find yourself playing cooperative poker, well, well, this one might change your mind if you didn't. So I give a lot of kudos because it's one of those games, again, that you go, why didn't I think of this? It shouldn't work. It's just Texas Hold'em with blind telling your partners who they think is in first, who you think isn't, and throwing in a little bit of powers asymmetrically across the way. Not fully the crew style, but to change it up and spice it up, which is absolutely necessary to make it or to prevent it from being too dry. The biggest downside and the reason it's not higher on this list for me is because if you're not a person who plays poker, if you're not used to poker, if you don't like poker, this isn't going to change your mind. And if you have a group that's not really, just knowledgeable about poker in general, it falls completely and utterly flat. And that's the biggest problem. So you got to be able to select, but for what it is and for what it can do, it's not going anywhere in my collection either, as a big fan of the game originally. 16, one of my favorite ones that I previewed back in 2023 when it came to crowdfunding, got delivered in 2024, the latest iteration of the Nizia tile layers, Cascadero. I really like the tracks. I really like not having to be the first one around a spot in order to maximize the points. Those two twists on the tile laying classics of previous yesteryear are things that, detractors aren't a fan of. But it's a slim box. It's easy to get to the table. The dynamics are different every time. It gives me a flavor that I don't have with the other Babylonias, Blue Lagoons, Tigris and Euphrates, Yellow and Yangtze's, Samurais. And so I enjoy it for what it is. Is it always the one I want to pull out and play immediately? No. But with all of those giving me a slightly different taste of what they offer, it isn't going anywhere, and I actually like it a little bit more than the one I covered in 2024, the latest of the Nizias in the tile laying genre of Rebirth. And again, not that Rebirth was bad, but it really needed the extra variety, spice of life second board to give it a little bit more legs for me. So I like this one from the same regard. At 16 here, this is where we actually start splitting hairs. This is easily, in any other year, a top 10 game for me, Ironwood, but this is where accessibility starts to be a little bit of the minutia that I'm having to look at. This is a war game disguised as a card-driven, slight area control game. You need to be aggressive. Thematically incorporating both the iron and the wood factions, it just works. There has been a huge amount of attention to detail to this, but you have to get the repeated play. You have to know the nuances of your faction. You have to know the nuances and the differences of the other faction. If you do not, it is easily, potentially very lopsided in who is going to, ultimately be the victor. But the card play is clever. It's heavily analysis paralysis inducing because of the variety of the cards themselves, whether you want to use them for battling or for playing on a turn-by-turn basis, along with the 3 cards that are in your hand no matter what, that always come back to your hand. But the uniqueness, the asymmetry is practically unrivaled in this game in the last year that we've seen. So it easily has a place in my collection. It's just going to be battling other similar style games with less of a rules curve overhead, less complexity in the actual gameplay, and why it's probably not higher on this list as well. But am I pleased with it? Absolutely. Like I said right at the beginning, if this was any other year, this easily would have been in the top 10. And that's how good of a year I think this was as a whole. One of the latest entries on this list, meaning I got this at the tail end of 2024, Worldspanner Factions. Duel of Ages reimagined, Duel of Ages redone, Duel of Ages streamlined, Duel of Ages back to your table. And this is, thematic experience on the board. As I joked about on my Best of 2024 awards, this is the super niche Guards of Atlantis 2 style. You have to have the right group, the right time, the right people, the right humor to play this, but it's an experience like none other. The expansions are just, giving you more of the stuff that's in the base game. So if you like the base game, the expansions just give you more of the stuff you want. It is a little bit of just card flip, see what you get sort of thing. And if that is something you have no problem with as a, significantly luck-driven game, well, it can be very, very frustrating, but also very, very fun. The weapons are just outstanding of how you're taking that. The constant respawning and reallocating and repositioning is cool. And again, it's just one of those games where It's Guards of Atlantis 2 Millennium Blades all over again. I have nothing like it. I'm never going to be able to play it enough to feel like I've, anywhere encapsulated all that it can bring to the table. But a game like Twilight Imperium, if you will, where if you play that game once or twice a year and you recognize the craziness and the experience that it is, it's going to fit very well in your collection. So that's why it's number 14 on this list. Speaking of your head-to-head duelers, number 13, Brother Ming and React. An 8-character head-to-head system, pre-constructed spatial manipulation. Think BattleCon with more of a spatial manipulation. If you liked the idea of Senjutsu and felt that that just completely missed the mark in terms of swinging and missing literally sometimes on your attacks, this is the ultimate combo system that you are looking for. This is the meta of a BattleCon, if that is your interest. This is the fighter game simulation from the consoles of yesteryear and ye old Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Tekken, if you will, only done in an absolutely tremendous way on the tabletop. Again, the only limitation to this game not being higher is because it thrives on the meta. It thrives on the mastery of your character. This is not a, you walk into the arcade and randomly start playing. This is, you go to the arcade and you practice with this character repeatedly. You learn how to combo their systems. You learn how to achieve the maximum potential in this very, very limited card deck construction that you have in the first place, and the manipulation of the sideboard in order to maximize your special power before and to outmaneuver your opponent. This is a game that is probably going to make you feel the most clever of potentially any on this list easily when done appropriately. It's fantastic. So, if that sounds like something you like, in the lines of your BattleCons, Yomi's Exceeds, and you want some spatial, and you didn't like Senjutsu, give it a look-see. Number 12, second to last on this, is Endeavor Deep Sea. When this came out to crowdfunding, and I had a chance to play the prototype, I said, I've never played the original Endeavor. Let's kind of see what all the hubbub is. Whoa! Right? And then I played it, and I was like, holy cow, competitive, cooperative. I just love the dynamics as a typical, again, non-worker placement person with a slight element of that with some resource management. Like, those aren't my preferred things. So when you have a game that captures you like this does, it's something special. And again, like I said earlier with Ironwood, in any other year, this would have easily been in my top 10. When this came to crowdfunding and I played it, I said, this is going to be all over people's top 10 lists. People are going to love this game. And, you know, I do love it. And this was probably one of the toughest cuts out of the top 10 that I had. Because, again, it's just a little bit longer, a little bit heavier than something I can play routinely like on a 2-player game night with my wife. But it is fantastic for what it is. Burnt Island did an amazing job with this. And in combination with Grand Gamers Guild, which, you know, they'll be making another appearance on this list elsewhere in the top 10. It just overachieves everything I thought. And again, I don't typically say this, that the themes make it for me, but it's very nice. But it's a game whose theme originally had no appeal to me, and this got me as a hook to get into it, and then mechanically sold me once I played it. And that's why it's number 12. It's also probably one of the games I could see of all of these so far on this list, easily jumping into the top 10 when we look back a year from now, just as a, wow, this has grown on me so much more, and I've been able to explore it. And that's also the fun part when you do these lists, where are they at a year later from now too. Well, we'll get to that though. Ironically, number 11, the last one on this list, I can't actually find the game, but that is Let's Go to Japan. I did not expect anything from this crowdfunding formed, overly deluxified in the form of giving you cookware on the campaign as potentially one of the best set collection games I've ever played. It shouldn't be as good as it is. It straddles the lines of both very casual and just play very lightly to heavily strategic with the layering of not only the 2 different locations, but also the 7 different days and the sets within those days in multiple ways, not to mention how happy and sad you can make yourself. I'd argue that I still kind of want the little mini expansion to go with it, just to give a slight more depth to it, even though the base game has more than enough to leave even someone looking for a little bit more strategy rather than just pure tactical based approach very happy. The traveling, the drafting, if you will, of, okay, take this, pass the one on that I don't want to the next person, shouldn't work as well as it does. And yet, it's smooth, it gives you randomness, it gives you variability without feeling like you don't have the control that you may want. It may not be as much control as you want, but you still have control of making the best possible choice within some realm of possibility every single round. It's intuitive, it works, and more importantly, it's fun. It's not too convoluted, even though on surface, with some of the slight nuances, it can appear that way upon initial read through of the rules. And so, again, one that I went in with very little expectations of and overachieved. And I'm happy to say it's a really fantastic game. So there you go. Number 25 through 11. That's all I got. It's a great year for games. Again, I'm always most intrigued by this, of being able to look back a year from now and say, okay, well, you know what? You liked them then. Where are they at now? And numbers 1 through 10 are just the same way. So that's all I got. You like it? Thumb it. Subscribe. Patreon down below, and you want to help me help you and want to know things that you should or shouldn't buy or shouldn't back and get a little extra content that way, let me know and tell me what you want. So that's all I got. Have a great freaking fantastic day. Peace out. See you later.